Hi everyone, welcome to Art with Miss Lynn. Today we're going to talk about texture. So a texture is something that we feel through touch, how something feels like when we touch something, right? So texture is everywhere on your clothing, face, even your hair. Right? There are many textures in the world. Today we're going to use a few different methods to create a texture paper or a painted paper that looks like a visual texture, so we can use them for collages, for different kinds of projects. A few different ways to do that. We're going to talk about rubbing. We're going to talk about line making, or using just regular drawing tools, pencil or markers or paint to create a visual texture. And another way is to actually change the paper physically. So let's get started. I have a few white paper over here that we're going to create some textures on. So the first one we're going to do is rubbing. So find something at your home that has a texture. Right? Maybe some of your toys, maybe some of the household items that you have at home that has some kind of texture. And what we're going to do is just simply put the paper on top of that texture using crayon to do some rubbing. So I have my crayons kind of peeled off. I don't need the paper part. It's easier if I use the side of the crayon. So I can just hold my crayon like this and do some rubbing. And you can see right away you can create a texture just by doing that. Right? You can try to go different directions and see how the texture might come out when you rub on top of it. So now we have a texture already that feels kind of bumpy. Right? So that's one way to do that. Let's make another one. Try another color. If you have a crayon at home, you can just peel off the paper and it's okay, because we can use it as a tool. Right? And let's try another one. Let's see, this one looks kind of sharp, but sometimes the texture might not come out how it looks like. We have to see. Let's do some rubbing. Oh, this one has a lot of dots. Okay. You can always overlap textures to create another form or another interesting pattern for a new texture. Okay, so I overlap two different textures together to create a more interesting pattern. So it's something that you can experiment at home. It's easy to do, and it's kind of fun to see what kind of results you might get. Right? So we have two sheets of rubbing texture that we just did. I'm going to fill this up. Let's do one more. I have this Lego plate for playing Lego on it. Use that. Oh, very bumpy. So the trick is to really hold on tight to your paper if it's a not like uneven surface, and use the side of the crayon, hold it down and rub it. Oh, this one looks like bubbles. Let's try a different one. Let's use the back and use another color. This one is more interesting, kind of like a net. Okay, so very interesting patterns and textures that you can create just by rubbing some physical items that you have at home. So that we did two different kinds of paper. And then the next thing we can try is we can use just lines to create texture. So for example, you can draw out using different kind of marks, right? Maybe something sharp, and you can use your color pencil or crayon, a marker to draw using different types of lines to create a texture. Something that is sharp and spiky. Okay. Practicing the different types of lines that you know. And when you're doing this, make sure you draw into repeatedly onto a bigger area, not just like one small little area. Right? You can try dots. That gives you a different feeling of texture here. Right? It kind of feels like sand, something very tiny. Right? You can also try scribbling. Using scribble lines, this will create another texture, maybe something very soft and fluffy, or you can try to do it like broken lines like this. Okay, so we're making lines using lines and different types of lines and marks to create a texture. Right, so here's another example. Another way is to use paint. Right, for example, I have one here using crayon and watercolor resist to create a really nice painted paper. So you can see a lot of patterns, or not really patterns, but a lot of marks and watercolor combined together. It was an interesting painted paper that you can use for projects. Here's another one. If you have paint at home, you can use paint to create all kinds of texture. For example, this, use different kinds of roller. So some rollers have like points, so it creates a lot of dots. Some of the roller is more like wavy lines, so creates a texture, kind of feels like grass. Right? So you can also experiment that if you have some paints at home. Alright, the last one we're going to do is just kind of changing the paper. Right now the paper is very smooth, right? So you can just change the paper with just like white paper like this, or if you want to create your own color paper, you can use the crayon or color pencil, whatever coloring materials at home that you have. If you don't have construction paper or color construction paper, you can make your own. Right? If I simply just rub the paper on my table, it already has sort of a sandy texture. Right? So one quick way to make a texture paper is just by crumbling it. And then you see when you open it, it totally changed the paper. It doesn't feel smooth anymore. Right? So now we have another kind of texture paper that we can use for different projects. Okay? So hope you try different ways to create your own texture paper so we can use it in other art projects. For example, collages, like mixed media projects that we can do together. Thanks for watching.